Look at this. Country fried chicken. Crispy, crunchy. Oh my goodness. All I can do. Two different battering methods. These are done with buttermilk. This is done with an egg and milk. This show will teach you both techniques, and they're both crispy, crunchy, and wonderful. Check this out. Wonderful country fried chicken. Hello. Welcome back to Texas Cooking Today. On this show, we're going to be doing a good southern favorite. This is country fried chicken, or chicken fried chicken, whichever you prefer. It's going to be battered and fried, alright? So, I'll tell you what, let's get right into this. It's a simple thing to make, but some people overcomplicate it. Come a little closer, let me show you what we're going to be using, and let's get this going. Alright, now on our ingredients, it's simple enough. We have some chicken over here. I've got some drumsticks and also a single boneless breast. And I'm going to show you two different ways of battering chicken for frying. And it is a wonderful thing to know. Both of these methods produce a nice crispy, crunchy crust. And they're both suited each for their own different way of cooking. So, we're going to be doing a buttermilk batter, which is buttermilk here, and we're also going to do an egg and milk batter. And this is just really simple. So, these other ingredients, we got our buttermilk, our milk, and that's about 2 cups of each, 3 eggs, and depending on how much chicken you're going to cook, you might want more eggs than this. But just for the single breast, I'm just going to go with 3. 2 will sometimes do also. You're not really producing a lot. So, we have some cayenne, black pepper, salt, some flour over here, and of course, we always need something to make the meal a little more enjoyable. It is helpful when you're making fried chicken if you'll go ahead and use a thermometer. This is a candy and deep frying thermometer. They also make these with a dial on the top of them that has a simple steel rod that comes down, and that works very well also. I use both types. They both work well. I do prefer this one when I'm just doing gentle frying though. Now for this, it's going to be a deep fry. And here's the thing, when you're deep frying, you're going to be cooking in more fat than just, a little thin layer on the bottom of the pan. Here I have a pan, and it is filled up with about 3/4 of an inch deep of peanut oil. And that's about 1/4 peanut oil. Now, I could have used another pan, there's all kinds of frying pans. I could have used something like this. But believe it or not, a frying pan like this will take more oil than one that has a straight side on it, like this does. That sloped side means that you're going to have to fill more oil as it flares outward, and it takes a lot more oil to work on this, although both will work. So I like to use the straight side. It works well for me. And also a good saucepan will work, anything with a nice good side on it. So let's get on to cooking up our chicken. Now it's time for us to prepare our chicken for frying. And what we want to do is go ahead and prepare each of these items so that they can be easily battered and fried well. Now what I like to do whenever I'm working with raw meats is I like to glove up. It just makes it real easy so I don't have to wash my hands when I'm finished with this. I can move straight on to my next task. I peel these off and I'm off and running. Now, simple enough. I wanted to show you 2 different ways of working on fried chicken, and one would be bone-in chicken like I have here with these drumsticks, and the other was doing a boneless chicken like chicken strips, chicken nuggets, chicken chunks, whatever you want to call them. Now here I have a chicken breast. This one had been frozen and thawed out again. That's the reason it looks a little pale on the back side here. This also has the tender still attached. That's this portion right over here. And you can see a distinct line between the tender and the breast meat itself. Some people like to remove that tender, and you'll see a line here. That's also part of that tender. But I'm just going to go ahead and cut this with it intact. Now, this is a neat way for you to stretch chicken if you have a family and you want to fill a lot of mouths and do it at a low cost. Use some boneless, skinless chicken breast. Looky there, and we're going to cut out these wonderful little strips. We're going to have chicken strips. There they are. If you notice, that breast can really turn out quite a bit of meat. And these are good thick pieces. If I want these longer ones, I can cut them in half, and that's precisely what I'm going to do. There, there. And the same with this. And this just makes them a little easier to handle. And the thing of it is this one breast is going to make a surprising amount of fried chicken. The neat thing about this is once you batter this, instead of just having 6 small little fillets like this, you're going to end up with 6 sizable crunchy pieces of chicken strips. Now on our drumsticks up here, a lot of people like to cook their chicken with the skin intact. I'm not one of those. One of the things that irritates me more than anything when I'm eating chicken is to bite into it and suddenly the whole skin comes off of that piece of chicken and I'm left with this that's cooked and no batter on it, and that's just not cool, okay? So what I want to do is I like to remove the skin. Now yeah, the skin tastes good. Let me tell you something, if you're just that into the skins, go ahead and batter them up too and fry them separate. It's not a big deal. But the beauty of this technique allows me, and sometimes you can't get that skin off like this. See, it's not wanting to come off of there. I can leave it dangling if I want. Or, if I want to use my knife, just cut off the excess, and that'll work fine. Now, the skins, if you want to cook them up separate, that's fine. But I tell you what, it's one of these things where it's 6 in one hand, half dozen in the other. So I'm not going to say you have to, but the beautiful thing about this is every time you take a bite, you get some crunch in each bite, and that's because the batter is going to be stuck to the meat rather than stuck to some skin that would have peeled off the first time that we bite into it. And if you've eaten fried chicken, you're quite aware of exactly what I'm talking about. Now once I started doing this and I got used to removing these skins, I really got quickly accustomed to it. And now I just think of doing this with the skin in place. So I've removed our skin. I can dispose of this now, and we're ready to move on to frying this chicken. And as I mentioned before, cleanup, watch this. Chicken is concealed in the glove. My hands are clean. We're ready to move on. Let's go ahead and season our chicken, and I'm going to leave it here on my cutting board. Now if you'll notice, the cutting board that I'm using is yellow. Remember our cutting board code system? The yellow cutting boards are strictly for poultry, and that would be raw poultry, not cooked. All cooked meats go on your brown board, remember? Now, and of course if you haven't seen that particular show where I kind of spell all that out, then you might want to take a look at it. And that would be my cutting board show, and it just kind of tells you the different colors and what they're used for. Let's start with our salt. Let's get a nice coating of salt. And I'm going to hold my salt in my hand between my fingers about 1 foot to 1.5 feet above what I'm wanting to salt. And I do that quite deliberately. That's to give a more even distribution of the salt itself. Look at my black pepper. Now I'm a person that likes a really spicy chicken flavor, okay? I like that Cajun spice so that it has a really hot peppery side to it. And that's what I'm going to do, is bring that out, and I'm going to do it by using cayenne. Now normally when you use cayenne, normally when I have a recipe that has cayenne, I tell you to go easy on it. And you're going to see me use so much cayenne here, it's going to make you freak out. Okay, when you're using this much cayenne, it kind of seems a little bit scary. And for most dishes, this would be just way too much. However, when it comes to fried chicken, here's something that a lot of folks don't know. What makes this hot is a oil that's in it. It's called an oil resin, and that resin, that oily resin, is extremely fiery hot. That's what makes the capsaicin. That's what makes it hot. Now, when you're cooking in oil, though, because that's an oil that's in there, the oil washes out into the cooking oil. And as a result, you have chicken that's not nearly as fiery hot as what it looks like I'm making. Now, if I was baking this chicken would be absolutely way too hot to eat because there's just way too much cayenne on it, okay? So, I'll repeat the process. Salt above it all. Our black pepper. I love the flavor that is brought to the surface from freshly ground black pepper. It's just a wonderful flavor. Our cayenne. Wonderful treat. It's going to give it that spicy taste that I like. There are some fast food chains that have a real spicy chicken that's very similar to this, and I absolutely love it that they do that. And of course they're Cajun chains is what they are, and they just have fantastic flavors involved. Now I'm going to turn these on edge just so I can hit them with a little bit of extra spice. Some salt first, a little bit of cayenne, and I'm going to turn it over to that back edge. Remember, on drumsticks, you got more than just that one side to coat, or two sides. It's all the way around. There we go. Tiny bit of salt, most of it's already been hit. Just a little bit more cayenne on a couple of those. And we're ready to go. I've got chicken that's ready to be battered. Now the next step on this, I want to show you, as I mentioned before, two different battering techniques. The first one is going to be with egg and milk, and that's what I'm going to use on these tenders. And the beautiful thing about that one is it has a tendency to turn golden brown in the oil really quickly, and that way when you're using thin slices of meat like this, it browns really nice and even, and it does so quickly. However, it does so too quickly to cook chicken that's on the bone like this. It's really thick and dense. So what I want to do here is I want to use the buttermilk recipe on the heavier pieces of chicken, and the wonderful thing about a buttermilk batter is that it will stand up to the heat of frying, and it'll do so for much, much longer than an egg and milk batter does. Okay, so you get to see the best of both worlds right here and how they're both applied. The first recipe I'll be showing you is how to prepare these simple tenders that we've made here, or these chicken strips you can call them. You can use chicken tenders for this. You can cut this into smaller pieces and make little nuggets. But either way, put them first in flour after you season them, and then dust it thoroughly with flour. Now, you may have heard people tell you to go ahead and season the flour, and I'm going to caution against that for one reason. As I've already told you, a great deal of the flavor of your spices gets cooked out in that oil. Anything that you put in this flour, for the most part, is going to get cooked out. The salt will flavor it, but the oils in the black pepper and the cayenne are just going to wash out of the batter. So, season the chicken, and then do your frying, okay? Don't worry about that batter. Now, let's move on to the liquid portion of our batter. Now, let's prepare our first batter. Remember, this one's going to be an egg batter. And what I'm going to do is to first crack my eggs into a separate bowl. This is a really wise thing to do. If you get any egg shells in the batter, you can go ahead and pick them out at that point. Give it a sniff, make sure there isn't a sour or a bad smell that says it might be something you don't want to use. That's good. There we are, and my third egg. Okay, now I'm going to give my hands a quick rinse, and then we're going to beat that. Break your yolk first. If you'll notice when I'm beating, I don't move in circles. I move from side to side. It's faster, and it will beat in more air a lot quicker. Now, even though I have here about 2 cups of regular milk, I won't be using all of it. Usually I'll use about a cup to a cup and a half, depending on whether it's if it's going to be 2 eggs or 3. So what it boils down to is roughly a half of a cup of milk to each egg that I put in. Now I have a very simple basic batter start. If you'll remember, we had placed our chicken tenders in flour after we seasoned them. And this is a perfect place for them to be. They can just sit in there and rest. It's not a big deal. This is not a race or anything. So let's go ahead and heat up the oil. I'm going to turn on my front burner. And if you'll notice, I have my thermometer in this. It isn't touching the bottom. It's just slightly above it, and that way I get a good accurate reading on the oil itself. I want to bring this oil up to 325 degrees, and that's when we start putting in our chicken. Now it is time for us to go ahead and finish battering up these wonderful little chicken strips. Now what I'm going to do is just kind of bring them to the surface of the flour, shake some of the excess off of them, and drop them right down into my egg mixture. Really simple. That's all that takes. I'll put it back in my flour and go back to shaking it the way I did the very first time. And watch this. Watch how it does something. Just shake it slowly. They will be covered with flour. Okay? There we have it. Now, I'm just going to do this again. And the thing of it is, when you're using an egg batter, you need to do this twice to get a really thick, crispy, crunchy kind of crust. It will work really well this way. When you're doing the buttermilk, you do not have to do this twice. You only do it once. And you get about the same crust either way. But as I mentioned before, what I'm doing is I'm just pulling these over the pan and dropping them in the flour. Give it that dust. Done. Again. And we've dusted them out. Now they can sit there until I'm ready to put them in the oil. They're already battered. They're ready to go in. My oil is coming up in temperature. It's right about 300 degrees right now. So, we're just about ready to drop in that chicken. I want to turn up the temperature on the oil slightly. I lowered it for just a moment, just to give me time to do the battering on that. One thing's for sure, keep a little towel or a rag or something handy, because when you're dusting with flour, sometimes it just gets a little away from you. This is probably one of my most common ways to batter, and the reason being, I don't normally keep buttermilk in the refrigerator, and a lot of times when I'm ready to do fried chicken, I want it right then. I don't want to go get buttermilk. So this method works great, especially if you're doing the boneless chicken, little thin strips like this. The temperature's coming up. Good. It's about 3:15, so what I'm going to start doing is beginning to put in my chicken. Now look at how well battered that is. Set that right in the oil. Number 2. Number 3. And number 4. Now, I like to use 2 separate tongs. One for battering, and I'll use a separate system for frying up my chicken. So come over a little closer, we'll get a good shot of the fry action. I'll tell you, the smell that's coming up from this is wonderful. If you do not have allergies to peanuts, I recommend you use the peanut oil. And of course, if you have allergies to peanuts, you already know better, as a peanut allergy is one of the deadliest that there is. I'm going to set my flame at about a medium to medium high. I don't want the oil to get too hot. one thing I can do, I'm going to take my drumsticks, drop them right down in the flour. I want to get started dusting these drumsticks, get them ready for their batter. Here we have it. 5 drumsticks, all set up and ready to go. Now as this is frying, I want to go ahead and show you, put your buttermilk into a separate bowl, the same way that you did with your egg and milk mixture, and you're ready to go. When you're frying chicken, you want to have something to put the chicken on. I recommend a simple baking pan with some cooling racks on it. These work wonderful for a drain rack. You can use paper towels on a pan just as well. The temperature on my oil right now is just slightly over 300 degrees. This is perfect for what I'm doing. They're almost ready to turn. 315. Quickly approaching 325. If you'll notice, the frying action is starting to slow. This is a good indication that the chicken is becoming cooked all the way through, as it is no longer releasing nearly as much moisture, which causes the high flare-up in the oil. I like to use this thermometer. That way I can adjust my flame as I need. Beautiful golden color, golden brown. I'm just going to set that aside. Cool. Now we already had our thighs, our legs, in the flour here. Now what I want to do is I want to take these out, shake off some of that excess flour, and put them right down into my buttermilk. I'm going to do that 2 at a time. I'll roll those around. Now the thing about the buttermilk, it can withstand heat way better than the egg can. So I put it in here, and if you'll notice how thick the coating is on the buttermilk, because we've put the flour on it beforehand. Let's go ahead and get better on this one. See how thick that coating is on there? All I have to do is run that through the flour well. Once I'm done, put it directly into my oil. Give it one pre-shake right before putting it down in the buttermilk. Saturate it well in my buttermilk. Look at that heavy coating on there. As I mentioned before, that bone-on takes a lot more time to cook. And if you'll notice, I'm getting more like flakes in my flour here rather than just regular flour. And that's okay. You just add more flour to it and keep on going. Don't worry about those flakes. They actually contribute to a good coating once you get enough of them. Now I have a full pan of chicken there. I brought my temperature up again. The bone-in chicken will pull the temperature of the oil down quickly, so you're going to need a lot of heat to recover. Go ahead and set your flame to full, and just leave it in there until it comes up and starts frying the way it should. Now, the amount of time it took for my chicken strips to cook, it's going to take about 3 to 4 times longer to cook bone-in chicken, okay? So just get ready to be relaxed and patient as that chicken cooks. And one thing's for sure that's really nice about this, when you're dealing with a buttermilk recipe like we're dealing with here, that buttermilk crust will resist the frying and will resist browning a lot longer than the egg crust will. And the idea here is, you know, the eggs will cook down and brown quickly, and we want that for these thin chicken strips. But we don't want it for this, and the reason is because it's going to turn a little bit too dark if you use the egg and milk mixture. If you use the buttermilk mixture, being that it has a lot of extra fat in there, it can resist the heat, it's going to cook longer. You're going to get a nice golden color still without it being too dark on that crust. So let's just let it cook. good looking. Just incredible. See how much longer it's been in the oil, and it is just now starting to become the same color as this that took us about half as much time. Now, I have my thermometer here. I'm going to go ahead and just plunge it right down into one of these to get a reading. Got 150 and it's still climbing a little bit. So what I'm going to do is leave it in here for just a few more minutes. Now once again, you can hear that the cooking is starting to slow. It's not as intense as before. just checked the internal temperature, and it was about 150. I want these to be about 165 or above. And remember, when you take them out of the oil, they're still going to continue to cook for a little bit. My internal reading just passed 167. That is sufficient for this fried chicken. I turn off the heat. Go ahead and pull it out of the oil. Remember, when you fry up chicken, that it does need to set up for just a little bit. That's extremely hot. So, give it some time, be patient, and it's going to be wonderful for you in just a little bit. Well, we have our chicken out of the fryer, and I've got some beautiful chicken here. This is real nice and crusty, and like I said before, real crispy. Yummy. I'll tell you what, we're going to go ahead and get this dished up. I'm looking forward to this. So you have a simple, very simple way of breading and frying your chicken. That's all there really is to it. This one, as you notice, produces a very coarse grain, but you're also breading it twice, and that's one of the reasons it gives you that. This one gives you a nice flaky looking crust, and it is, and at the same time you get that this is very much the store-bought type chicken right here. That's very much like what that's like. So now all we have to do is just wait for it to cool and it's ready to serve. I'm looking forward to this chicken. There we have it. That's all there is to it. It's not that hard to fry chicken. It's simple. Just don't leave yourself out. Let's take a look first. Oh, look at this. This wonderful batter on here. It coated wonderfully. Crunchy. Wonderful tasting. Dear. And then there's these guys. This beautiful batter. Like I said, you can bite into it, and the rest of the chicken still has batter for you. Oh God, that's crunchy. And that's the wonderful part about that buttermilk batter. It gets crunchy. Crispy and crunchy, and really crunchy. So, two count wonderful ways of preparing fried chicken. Give them a shot. You're going to love it. I'll tell you what, thank you for watching Texas Cooking Today. Please subscribe, and you have a good day. Thank you for watching Texas Cooking Today, the show where you can get great recipes and the best techniques are taught. Please subscribe to Texas Cooking Today, where you will always find something hot and ready to eat.